February 23, 1945. Iwo Jima. 21-year-old Corporal Herschel Williams is crawling across volcanic ash toward a Japanese pillbox. Bullets ricochet off his 70-pound flamethrower tanks. He can see the barrel of a machine gun protruding from a slit in the concrete. The gun is firing at Marines pinned down behind him. Williams gets within 25 yards. He pulls both triggers on his weapon. A massive ball of flame rolls toward the pillbox and engulfs the opening. The machine gun goes silent. Williams moves to the next bunker, and the next. For 4 hours, alone, covered only by 4 riflemen who are somehow still alive, he destroys 7 reinforced concrete pillboxes that have stopped the entire Marine advance for 3 days. This is the story of the farm boy from West Virginia who was told he was too short to be a Marine. The man who watched his entire flamethrower squad die or get wounded one by one until he was the only one left. And the last surviving Medal of Honor recipient from World War II, who lived to age 98, carrying the weight of every man he burned alive on that volcanic island. Herschel Woodrow Williams was born on October 2, 1923 in Quiet Dell, West Virginia, the youngest of 11 children in a dairy farming family. He weighed 3.5 pounds at birth and was not expected to live. His mother, Lorena, named him Herschel after the local doctor who reached the farm 3 days later. Several of his siblings had already died in the 1918 to 1919 flu pandemic. His father, Lloyd, died of a heart attack when Herschel was 11. Herschel grew up working the dairy farm, milking cows, hauling hay, fixing fences, hard physical labor that built strength but did not build height. By the time he was a teenager, Herschel stood 5 feet 6 inches tall. He had a nice smile and a quiet demeanor. Everyone called him Woody, and he had a girl back home named Ruby whom he planned to marry when the time was right. When World War II began, Woody was impressed by the Marine Corps dress blues uniform worn by local men who had enlisted. The sharp blue coat with red piping, the white belt, the polished shoes. It looked to Woody like the finest uniform in the military. The Army's brown wool uniform, by contrast, was the ugliest thing in town. Woody decided he wanted to be a Marine. He knew nothing about the Marine Corps. He just wanted to wear that uniform. After the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941, Woody tried to enlist. The Marines rejected him. Too short. The minimum height requirement was 5 feet 8 inches. Woody was 2 inches too short. He was devastated, but he did not give up. Later, as the war escalated and casualties mounted, the Marines lowered the height requirement. Woody enlisted the moment he turned 18 in 1943. He thought he would never have to leave the country. He thought he would just defend it against invaders. He was wrong. Woody wound up 8,000 miles from home on the island of Guadalcanal in the Pacific. There, in early 1944, he and some other Marines received crates of flamethrowers. The weapons were mysterious. 2 tanks to hold flammable liquid, a 3rd tank of compressed air to push the liquid out, a nozzle containing a barrel with phosphorus matches that ignited the liquid as it spurted out. The weapon weighed 70 pounds and the tanks were virtually bulletproof. There was no training manual, no instructor, no guidance on how the weapon was to be used. The Marines had to figure it out themselves. They experimented with different types of fuel and settled on a mix of diesel and high-octane aviation gasoline. The diesel provided the body. The gasoline provided the ignition. Together, they created a jet of burning fuel that could reach 50 yards and incinerate everything in its path. Woody became a demolition sergeant and flamethrower specialist. He trained on Guadalcanal. He fought at Guam in July 1944. And then, in February 1945, he was sent to Iwo Jima. Iwo Jima was a hellscape. A volcanic island shaped like a pork chop, about 5 miles long and 2.5 miles wide, roughly 700 miles from Japan. The island was made of black volcanic ash and jagged rock. No trees, no vegetation. Just ash, sulfur fumes, and heat. The Japanese had turned it into a fortress. Over 20,000 soldiers defending 2 strategic airfields. If the Americans could take those airfields, they could use them as emergency landing sites for bombers returning from raids on Japan. If they could not, thousands of American airmen would die ditching in the Pacific. The Japanese commander, General Tadamichi Kuribayashi knew he could not win. He wrote to his wife, "No one here expects to return alive." But he could make the Americans pay. He ordered his men to dig. For months, Japanese soldiers tunneled into the volcanic rock, creating a network of reinforced concrete pillboxes, bunkers, caves, and tunnels. The pillboxes had concrete walls up to 4 feet thick, multiple chambers, interconnected tunnels, and ventilation systems specifically designed to counter flamethrower attacks. Each pillbox was sited to provide interlocking fields of fire with neighboring positions. Attacking one meant being shot by 3 others. The construction was brutal. Workers endured temperatures between 86 and 122 degrees Fahrenheit in the tunnels with sulfur fumes so intense that gas masks were required. 25% of the garrison, about 5,000 men, was dedicated solely to tunneling work. By the time the Americans landed, Iwo Jima was honeycombed with over 11 miles of tunnels. On February 21, 1945, the 3rd Marine Division landed on the black volcanic beaches of Iwo Jima. Woody Williams stepped off the landing craft scared half to death. He was a demolition sergeant assigned to the 1st Battalion, 21st Marines. He supervised 6 other flamethrower and demolition men in his special weapons unit. Their job was to eliminate pillboxes that conventional weapons could not destroy. Tanks could not get close enough. Bazookas and artillery had minimal effect on the reinforced concrete. The only way to silence the pillboxes was to get close enough to burn the occupants alive or blow them apart with satchel charges. The first 2 days were chaos. Marines died by the hundreds. The volcanic ash made it impossible to dig foxholes. Mortars and artillery exploded on impact, throwing shrapnel in every direction. Casualties mounted faster than medics could treat them, and the Japanese stayed hidden in their bunkers, firing from concealed positions invisible until they opened fire. February 23, 1945. The same day the flag was raised on Mount Suribachi. While photographers captured that iconic moment on the southern tip of the island, Woody Williams was fighting for his life 3 miles to the north. His battalion had been stopped cold by a cluster of Japanese pillboxes. The Marines had tried everything: artillery, naval gunfire, tank fire, airstrikes. Nothing worked. The pillboxes were too well constructed, too well concealed, and the interlocking fields of fire made it impossible to approach without being cut down. About midday, Woody's company commander, Captain Donald Beck, held a meeting in a shell hole to figure out what to do. Marines were dying. The attack had stalled. They were 3 days behind schedule. Beck looked at Woody and asked if he thought he could make progress with his flamethrower. Woody said he would try. Beck assigned several Marines to cover Woody. 4 riflemen whose names were never definitively recorded in historical documents. Their job was to suppress enemy fire while Woody worked. Beck also assigned a pole charge man, a Marine armed with a long wooden pole with explosives taped to the end. His job was to stick the charge into the pillbox after Woody fired, to make sure everyone inside was dead. Woody grabbed his flamethrower. 70 pounds of metal, tanks, hoses, and fuel strapped to his back. He checked the ignition system. He checked the fuel tanks. 50 gallons. Enough for 10 to 12 bursts. Then the fuel would be gone and he would have to go back for a fresh weapon. He moved forward with the covering team. Within minutes, the pole charge man was struck in the helmet by a bullet and knocked unconscious. The covering Marines started falling, shot, wounded, killed. Woody kept moving. He was alone now. Just him and the 4 riflemen Beck had assigned. And those 4 Marines, whoever they were about to fight the most desperate battle of their lives. Let us know in the comments where you are watching this from. Are you in the United States, Germany, the United Kingdom, or somewhere else? We would love to know who is keeping these stories alive. Woody crawled toward the first pillbox. He could see the barrel of a Japanese machine gun protruding from a firing slit in the concrete. The gun was firing continuously, pinning down Marines behind him. Bullets ricocheted off Woody's flamethrower tanks. The tanks were bulletproof, but if a round hit the hoses or the nozzle, the weapon would be useless. Woody got within 20 to 25 yards of the pillbox. He stood up. He pulled both triggers. A massive ball of flame rolled toward the pillbox and engulfed the firing slit. The machine gun went silent. The first pillbox down. Woody moved to the next position. This time he noticed a wisp of smoke escaping from a ventilation hole in the top of the pillbox. The Japanese had designed the bunkers with air vents to allow fresh air in and smoke out. But those vents were also vulnerabilities. Woody crept up to the pillbox, climbed on top, stuck the nozzle of his flamethrower into the vent, and fired. The flame shot down into the bunker. The occupants had no escape. Woody heard screaming. Then silence. Got them all, he thought. Japanese soldiers in a nearby position saw what Woody was doing. They came out of their pillbox with bayonets fixed, determined to kill the Marine who had been burning them alive all afternoon. Their target was Woody Williams, 5 feet 6 inches tall, 130 pounds, armed with a flamethrower that took 2 hands to operate and left him defenseless at close range. The Japanese soldiers charged. Woody saw them coming. He pulled both triggers. The flame shot out. The Japanese soldiers slowed down and fell, their clothes ablaze. Woody had no remorse at the time. The Japanese were killing Marines. The battle had to be won. He had no qualms. Woody's fuel ran out. The flamethrower was dead weight. He dropped it and ran back to his own lines to get a fresh weapon. The 4 riflemen covering him kept firing, suppressing Japanese positions, keeping Woody alive. He grabbed a new flamethrower, 70 pounds. Fresh fuel. He ran back to the front. The 4 riflemen were still there, still firing, still alive. Woody went back to work. He moved from pillbox to pillbox, burning, crawling, advancing. The Japanese fired at him from multiple positions. He was hit in the ammunition pouch by a bullet. Observers thought he was finished, but the bullet did not penetrate. Woody regained his feet and continued his assault. He ran out of fuel again. He went back for a 3rd flamethrower. Woody does not remember going back to his lines 5 times for fresh weapons, but that is what he did. 5 times he dropped an empty flamethrower, ran back across open ground under fire, grabbed a new weapon, and returned to the fight. 5 times the 4 riflemen covering him kept him alive. 5 times he went back to the pillboxes and kept burning. At one point, Woody used captured Japanese grenades along with his flamethrower. Minimal fuel remaining. Multiple targets. He improvised. He threw grenades to suppress enemy fire, then moved in with the flamethrower to finish the job. The Japanese fortifications thought to be impregnable were falling one by one. Woody moved from position to position, frequently to the rear of hostile emplacements where the Japanese did not expect an attack. He exploited blind spots in their defenses. He used smoke and confusion from one burning pillbox as cover to attack the next. For 4 hours, Woody fought. 4 hours of crawling through volcanic ash. 4 hours of burning men alive. 4 hours of being shot at from every direction. 4 hours of watching the 4 riflemen covering him fire thousands of rounds to keep Japanese soldiers from killing him. By the end of the day, Woody had destroyed 7 pillboxes. The exact number remains a subject of historical debate. Popular accounts cite 7. Woody's Medal of Honor citation does not specify a number, stating only that he worked to wipe out one position after another, but 7 is the number most commonly accepted. What is not debated is the result. The Japanese defensive line that had stopped the Marine advance for 3 days was broken. The 21st Marines advanced 300 crucial yards toward the strategic airfield. The breakthrough allowed the entire division to move forward. And the tactics Woody used, short fuel bursts, exploitation of ventilation systems, attacking from the rear, revolutionized Marine Corps flamethrower doctrine for the remainder of the Pacific War. If you are enjoying this story and want more untold accounts from World War II prisoners of war, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are bringing you stories that most history books never covered. The Battle of Iwo Jima lasted 36 days. Fought over an apocalyptic landscape of blasted volcanic sand and rubble, the combatants used swords, pistols, rocks, rifle butts, and bamboo lances. Some fighting was done at arm's length. One Japanese soldier attacked a Marine with a samurai sword, slicing his arm from his hand to his elbow. A Japanese soldier clutching an explosive charge ran up against a U.S. tank and blew himself up. Hand grenades were thrown back and forth like baseballs before they exploded. One Marine threw back 7. War correspondent Robert Sherrod said he had never seen so many dismembered soldiers. "Nowhere in the Pacific War have I seen such mangled bodies," he wrote in Life magazine. Many were cut squarely in half. Legs and arms lay 50 feet away from any body. In one case, a Marine's severed foot was recovered still in its boot. The serial number on the boot was noted and the foot was buried in a formal grave. Later, the owner of the foot was found alive in a hospital in Saipan. For the Marine Corps, Iwo Jima was one of its most epic battles. It saw one of the largest Marine Corps forces ever fielded, 70,000 men, and the largest casualty toll in its history. Roughly 6,800 Marines, sailors, and one Coast Guardsman were killed. Thousands more were wounded. The casualty rate was over 30%. 1 in 3 Marines who landed on Iwo Jima was killed or wounded. For the Japanese, the battle was annihilation. Each Japanese soldier was instructed to kill 10 Americans. General Kuribayashi knew his men would not survive. Of the roughly 20,000 Japanese defenders, only 1,083 survived. 2 of those survivors remained in hiding until 1949. The rest died in the tunnels, bunkers, and caves they had spent months digging. Woody's best friend was killed on Iwo Jima. The 6 other flamethrower men in his unit vanished one by one during the battle. Dead or wounded, Woody did not know. He never saw most of them again. The 4 riflemen who covered him during his 4-hour assault survived, but their names were never recorded in official documents. They remain anonymous heroes who fought their own desperate battle while Woody burned the pillboxes. On October 5, 1945, Corporal Herschel Woody Williams stood in the White House and received the Medal of Honor from President Harry S. Truman. The citation read, "For conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of his life above and beyond the call of duty, as demolition sergeant serving with the 1st Battalion, 21st Marines, 3rd Marine Division, in action against enemy Japanese forces on Iwo Jima, Volcano Islands, 23 February 1945. Quick to volunteer his services when our tanks were maneuvering vainly to open a lane for the infantry, through the network of reinforced concrete pillboxes, buried mines, and black volcanic sands, Corporal Williams daringly went forward alone to attempt the reduction of devastating machine gun fire from the unyielding positions. Covered by only 4 riflemen, he fought for 4 hours under intense enemy small arms fire and repeatedly returned to his own lines to prepare demolition charges and obtain serviced flamethrowers. He returned to the front, frequently to the rear of hostile emplacements, to wipe out one position after another. On one occasion, he daringly mounted a pillbox to insert the nozzle of his flamethrower through the air vent, kill the occupants, and silence the gun. On another, he grimly charged enemy riflemen who attempted to stop him with bayonets and destroyed them with a burst of flame from his weapon. Of the 27 Marines and sailors who earned the Medal of Honor at Iwo Jima, Woody would become the last one still living. After the war, Woody married Ruby. He came home to West Virginia. He got a job with the Department of Veterans Affairs. He established a successful horse farm. He tried to live a normal life, but the nightmares would not stop. He dreamed he was not shooting fire, but fighting it, putting out fires, massive walls of flame coming toward him. Once, while dreaming, he terrified Ruby when he jumped up, pushed their bed out of the way, and began pounding on the wall at an imaginary wave of fire. "I'm fighting this wall of fire," he said, "trying to put it out." The nightmares continued for decades. Woody carried the weight of every man he had burned alive on Iwo Jima. He did not talk about it. He could not talk about it. He put it in the recess of his mind, but it was always there. The screaming, the smell of burning flesh, the faces of Japanese soldiers charging him with bayonets, their clothes ablaze. Then, 58 years after the war, in 2003, Woody experienced a profound religious awakening at the Pea Ridge Methodist Church. He gave his life to Christ, and the nightmares stopped. Woody said as a Christian, he now regretted having killed people. "It's one of those things that you put in the recess of your mind," he said. "You were fulfilling an obligation that you swore to do, to defend your country. Anytime you take a life, there's always some aftermath to that if you've got any heart at all." Woody spent the rest of his life speaking about his experiences and inspiring younger generations by his example. He traveled the country telling his story. He met with veterans, He visited schools. He established the Herschel Woody Williams Medal of Honor Foundation to honor Gold Star families who had lost loved ones in service. He lived to see the opening of monuments bearing his name. He lived to meet Japanese veterans and reconcile with former enemies. And he lived to become the last surviving Medal of Honor recipient from World War II. On June 29, 2022, Herschel Woody Williams died at the age of 98. He outlived every other Medal of Honor recipient from the war. He outlived his wife Ruby. He outlived his best friend from Iwo Jima. He outlived the 4 riflemen who had saved his life. And when he died, an era ended. The last living connection to the greatest generation was gone. The story of Woody Williams is about the cost of heroism. He destroyed 7 pillboxes in 4 hours. He broke the Japanese defensive line. He saved countless Marine lives. And he earned the Medal of Honor. But he paid for it with 58 years of nightmares. 58 years of waking up in terror, fighting walls of fire, reliving the moments when he burned men alive. The medal was an honor, but it was also a burden. The story is also about the anonymous heroes. The 4 riflemen who covered Woody during his assault are never named in historical documents. We do not know who they were. We do not know if they survived the war. But without them, Woody would have died in the first 5 minutes. They fired thousands of rounds to keep Japanese soldiers from killing him. They suppressed enemy positions. They provided covering fire while Woody went back to his lines 5 times to get fresh weapons. And they never received recognition for what they did. The story is about the nature of war. Woody Williams was a gentleman, a farm boy from West Virginia who wanted to wear the dress blues. He had no desire to kill. But when the moment came, when his captain asked if he thought he could make progress with his flamethrower, Woody said yes. And for 4 hours he became a destroyer of men. He incinerated Japanese soldiers in their bunkers. He burned men alive who charged him with bayonets. He did what had to be done, and he lived with the consequences for the rest of his life. The Battle of Iwo Jima was one of the bloodiest battles in Marine Corps history. 36 days of fighting over 5 square miles of volcanic rock. 6,800 Americans killed. 20,000 Japanese killed. All for 2 airfields. But those airfields saved thousands of American bomber crews who used them as emergency landing sites. The island was strategic. The cost was justified. But that does not change the fact that tens of thousands of men died on that volcanic rock. Woody Williams was the last survivor. The last man who could tell the story firsthand. The last man who could describe what it was like to crawl across black volcanic ash while bullets ricocheted off his flamethrower tanks. The last man who could explain what it felt like to pull both triggers and watch a ball of flame engulf a pillbox. The last man who carried the weight of those 4 hours for the rest of his life. When Woody died in 2022, he was buried with full military honors. The Medal of Honor draped across his coffin. Marines saluted. Taps played. And the nation said goodbye to the last hero of the greatest generation. The farm boy who was too short to be a Marine. The man who destroyed 7 pillboxes in 4 hours. The last survivor of Iwo Jima's Medal of Honor recipients. Herschel Woody Williams. Gone, but never forgotten.